and welcome to the MECERN podcast. This is the podcast where we talk to MECERN members and associates about their current or ongoing research into the medieval world of Central Europe. I'm Karen Culver, and today it is my great pleasure to meet with Merike Kurisoo, the director of the Niguliste Museum in Tallinn, to talk about the Rode Altarpiece, time travel to the 1480s. Merike graduated from the Estonian Academy of Arts in 2001 with a degree in art history, took an MA at the University of Tartu in 2006, and in 2019 defended her doctoral thesis at Tallinn University. The thesis was entitled In Different Things and in Different Times, Transformation of the Ecclesiastical Space and Visual Culture from Catholic to Lutheran in Early Modern Estonia. Since 2001, Merike has been working at the Art Museum of Estonia. From 2013 to 18, she was editor-in-chief of the research journal Proceedings of the Art Museum of Estonia. And since 2019, she's been the chair of the research board of the museum. She has served as curator and program manager of the Niguliste Museum, and on September the 1st, 2024, became the director of the Niguliste and the Adamson Erik Museums. She has organized numerous exhibitions, including one about the Virgin Mary in medieval Livonia, that's 2019 to 20, The Art of Dying, exploring a death culture of medieval and early modern Estonia and Livonia. Presently, she is curating an exhibition on unicorns at the Niguliste Museum in collaboration with the Swedish History Museum and the Royal Armoury of Sweden. I've seen pictures of it. It looks amazing. Merike's main research field is medieval and early modern church art. She's authored books, compiled collections, and published numerous scholarly articles. She has lectured at the Estonian Academy of Arts, Tallinn University, the University of Tartu, and the Estonian Academy of Music and Theatre's Drama School. Merike lives with her family and 2 cats. She loves going to rock concerts, and she also loves outdoor swimming, which, considering Tallinn is reasonably far north, it sounds very brave to me. Merike, welcome to the MECERN podcast.
Hello, thank you.
It's good to have you here. When I visited Tallinn in the summer of 2024, I was told that St. Nicholas Church was one of the oldest churches in the city. It is now a beautiful museum dedicated to medieval religious art. For those who do not know Tallinn or the church, please, could you give us a very brief background to the church and the museum?
Niguliste Museum is one of the branches of the Art Museum of Estonia. And of course, you are right, it's a former medieval church. But first, just a short look what Tallinn was in the Middle Ages. Tallinn is situated at the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea and was established as a city in the 13th century. And in medieval times, Tallinn had only 2 parish churches, St. Olav's, Olaviste, and St. Nicholas, Niguliste. Tallinn was a Hanseatic city, a quite rich Hanseatic city, because all the trade between the Western Hansa cities with Russia was done via Livonian cities, via Tallinn, Riga, Tartu. And the merchants living in Tallinn were mostly German-speaking, and the city was German-speaking in these times. Of course, Estonians, Finnish, and Swedes also lived, but it was a multicultural city. And St. Nicholas was a Catholic parish church to the beginning of the 16th century. But the Reformation came to the Livonian towns really early, already in the 1520s, and Tallinn became a Lutheran city in 1524-25, and it means that St. Nicholas became Lutheran. And it was an active church until the Second World War. And in March 1944, when the Soviet army bombed Tallinn, St. Nicholas was hit by the bomb, and the church burned down and was left to the ruins. And in 1950s, thanks to the heritage people and thanks to the art historians, officially it was started to rebuild and reconstruct the church. but church is not possible during the Soviet period, but they started to reconstruct this as a museum. And it is very uncommon for this time. Very few churches in the Soviet Union were restored and reused as museums. And all the work took almost 40 years, and Niguliste was opened as a branch of the Art Museum of Estonia exactly 40 years ago. We are celebrating this anniversary in the end of November 1984. And Niguliste was on one of the richest churches, not only in Tallinn, but in the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea. And many works of art you see today in Niguliste actually coming from this church. And it means that you can see the works of art in their historical context, in the original places. But the collection itself, it shows the most important part of the historical church art of Estonia. And for me, the part historical is really important because all the objects in our collection are coming from the Estonian churches. It means they are part of our history or part of our cultural memory. And we know a lot about the commissioning of these objects and about the people in the past who were behind these objects. And in some way, it's making them living.
Yeah, that feeling really came across when I visited your museum church. It felt like I was going into a church. Today, we are going to be talking about the Rode Altarpiece, which, when I saw it at the end of the Niguliste Museum, St. Nicholas Church, it just blew me away because it's so big and so beautiful. We're on an audio, so we're the only two who can see it. I can see it in my head. Could you briefly describe it for our audience?
The wonderful Rode Altarpiece, the altarpiece of the high altar of St. Nicholas Church, is the key object of our collection. And this is really one of the best preserved and largest late medieval northern German altarpieces in all Europe. It's huge if we are thinking about the size. When it's opened, it is two-winged altarpiece, two-pair-winged altarpiece. It's a 6 meter wide and almost 4 meter high. And this is quite typical altarpiece for the main altar. Very few have been preserved of this type, but it has double wing, and it means that the altarpiece has three views: the closed view, the half open view, and the fully open view. And usually the altarpieces with so difficult pictorial program was meant to the high altars. And the pictorial program shows which saints were beloved by late medieval Tallinners. And in some way, it is as a saint book of late medieval citizens of Tallinn. When it's opened, the fully open, the most festive view of the altarpiece presents 2 rows of gilded and painted sculptures. And there are more than 30 big figures and smaller figures between them. And the open view of the altarpiece is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. So the most important scene is the blessing of the Virgin by Christ. This is one type of the coronation of the Virgin, and 12 apostles standing together with mother and son. And below of them, you can see Virgin Mary with her mother Anne and small Christ child. It was actually very beloved motif in late medieval German-speaking areas. And there are several saints, female saints and male saints, standing with them. And what is special with the open view of the Rode Altarpiece is that you can see quite a lot of female saints, more than usual. So it is really very gender balanced altarpiece in modern terms, and also shows the cult saint of late medieval Tallinn. And half open view of the altarpiece is dedicated to Saint Nicholas, the patron saint of the Tallinn. And Saint Nicholas was very, very beloved saint in all Hanseatic cities because he was the patron saint of sailors and merchants. So we can see 8 scenes from the life of Saint Nicholas. And the story that is on Rode Altarpiece is coming from the Golden Legend because it is as a comic book. All the scenes are together with the text. Yeah. So you look at the picture and you read the text. And the text is in Low German, which was the main language in these times in most of the Hanseatic cities. But the other 8 scenes are dedicated to Saint Victor of Marseille. Very uncommon, not well-known saint in the north or in the Hanseatic cities, but here in Tallinn he was highly venerated. And we think that he was the patron saint of Tallinn because he has been mentioned several times in the city records, and we have few objects and works of art depicting him. Why Tallinners choose him as a patron of the city, we don't know. He was an early Christian soldier, a martyr saint, but as a Marseille saint, was connected with the port and sea, and maybe this is one of the reasons. And the closed view of the altarpiece. This is actually one of my favorite views of the altarpiece because we are closing the altarpiece really seldom. And this is really very traditional. And you can see 3 female saints, Virgin Mary in the middle, of course, with Barbara and Catherine of Alexandria. And on the other wing, the patron of the church, Saint Nicholas, with 2 soldiers, Saint George and Saint Victor again. And especially with late medieval Tallinn is that the soldier saints were very highly venerated. And you can see this on Rode Altarpiece. And in our collection, we have also altarpiece of the Brotherhood of the Blackheads. This was an organization of unmarried foreign merchants. And you can see the soldier saints also there. This is special with Tallinn and also with Riga.
You've explained the altarpiece in terms of the wings. I've seen medieval altarpieces with a wing either side. Yours has 2 wings either side. And I know when I saw it, I was thinking, how did the city react when it was opened or closed? Was there a buzz that everyone came to watch it being opened, or was it simply something that happened on a particular day?
Yeah, I think it was really, really special. And in today's terms, you can compare the Rode Altarpiece with kinetic works of art, which are in constant motion. And they are changing, they are moving, and in medieval times they were closed and opened according to church calendar. And even today we open and close just 3 times per year. And even today it's a major event. People are coming and we are making excursions. It's a big day for Tallinners. And of course it was even bigger in the Middle Ages. And of course it was as a part of the eternal mystery, which was very, very important part of the people's everyday life. And the open altarpiece is a real wonder. All the gilded golden figures showing the mystery of the Virgin Mary and her family. And even today, it is a mystery to us how this kind of altarpieces were really used. In general, if you think and know that they were fully opened on the most festive days, probably on the feast days of the Virgin Mary or the special saints depicted on the corpus. But in general, there are very few medieval sources how this kind of altarpieces were closed or opened. So the short answer to your question is it was a very, very festive event. And of course, most of the citizens came to the church to see this, be part of this.
Yeah, and you've just made me realize that that would then also create the festival itself. If it's open for the Festival of the Virgin, you go and see the opening, and that's the festival. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. And the winged altarpiece, the opening and closing the wings, this is also in some way the miracle, the opening of the altarpiece. In a very short time, you can be part or you can see something very, very rare and very, very special. And after that, the doors are closing again.
Must have felt wonderful. We've been talking about the wings of the altarpiece, and you said when it's fully open, it's 6 meters wide and 4 meters high, which is massive, which makes me think, being a practical person, about the structural issues. It's made of wood, and therefore it's quite heavy, and it's dated from 1480. How come it can actually hold that weight? How does it do it without breaking or collapsing?
It's medieval craftsmanship. And the altarpiece is huge, as you say, and it weighs several tons because it's made of very, very heavy oak. And to do this kind of construction was a very, very precision science of this time. And as you say, the structure is meant to hold the wings, and the corpus is actually the key here. And the corpus is holding the double wings, and you can move and close as. And the hinges, the forge hinges, are actually the key there. And what is special with the Rode Altarpiece that all the original metal parts has been preserved and not replaced, and it all works. And even today we have a double construction actually. And when you are going back to the altarpiece, you can see the modern construction from the beginning of the 1980s. And this is made of metal, and this is holding the altarpiece. And probably in medieval times, they had also this kind of systems. So the huge altarpieces were not placed on the stone altars. They are too big for that. They were standing behind the stone altars. And probably they had a similar system that we have today. So they had a construction which held this up. And it would have been made of wood, oak, or also of metal. And this altarpiece has also predella, and it means that it's even more difficult to hold this up.
Yeah, even modern technology, I would be wondering how it was done. And the idea that it's all still there from the 1470s, 1480s is amazing.
You also must think about that to travel, how this huge altarpiece came to Tallinn, because we know from the sources that it came to Tallinn in August 1481, and the men from Lübeck, from Rode's workshop, came with the altarpiece, and it took several days to put it up. We even know the name of the man who came to Tallinn, and it was Hendrik van der Brock. And he was the one and his men who did this huge work. And it was as a puzzle. It came in parts, and they put it all together in place.
That's amazing. You've mentioned previously the Guild of the Blackheads and this link with Lübeck. Can you explain more of the relationship between the Guild and Lübeck?
Yeah, I start with the guilds. The life of the citizens were also organized by different guilds and organizations. And the main guilds in Tallinn, the biggest guilds, were the Great Guild, the St. Canute's Guild, and St. Olaf's Guild, and the Brotherhood of the Blackheads. And the Great Guild was the organization of the married and rich merchants. And also the city councillors came from the Great Guild. the Brotherhood of the Blackheads was an organization of unmarried foreign merchants, and they were really closely connected with the Great Guild. When the member of the Blackhead married, then he automatically became a member of the Great Guild. So they were organizations of the fathers and sons. And these two organizations were probably the main donors of the Rode Altarpiece, because you can see the emblems of these two organizations on several places on the altarpiece. And the altarpiece itself was commissioned from Lübeck, and Lübeck was the mother city of the Hanseatic League and was also the most important art city during 15th century in the Baltic Sea region and northern Germany. So most of the magnificent altarpieces in this time was commissioned from Lübeck. And Herman Rode was one of the main masters in the city and lived together in the Lübeck in the same time with Bert Notke, another big name of late medieval Northern German art. And they both were focused on the foreign markets. And we can see Rode's altarpieces in quite many churches in mid-Sweden today, but not in this scale. They are much smaller. So it was very, very popular and prestigious to commission from Rode's workshop in 1460s, 1470s. And Rode was also the chair of the St. Luke's Guild, and this was the guild of the painters and glazers and sculptors in Lübeck. So was an important man in the city. And this altarpiece, our Rode altarpiece, is the most important work from his legacy. Rode has a very distinctive style. He was a painter, and when you see the paintings of the Rode altarpiece, you can recognize the other Rode works also. He had a very special style. You can see these puppet-like figures, quite feminine figures, and very beautiful pastel tones, light pink, light blue. And as I started to answer to your questions, the Blackheads and the Great Guild, they were the main powers behind the commissioning of the altarpiece. But this kind of altarpiece is meant to the main altar. They were common commissioning. All the city, where all the congregation was behind that, not only the wealthy and powerful. And also the pictorial program shows that. Every saint depicted there is some organization behind that, not only the biggest, but the small ones also.
And are any of the guild masters shown?
Not on this altarpiece, actually. And it is probably because of that it was meant to the main altar. It is very common with the altarpieces on the side altars. But I think that the donor marks or emblems, as you see on the Rode altarpiece, this is one solution. You are showing the organizations behind the donors, but not the private persons. The altarpiece of the Brotherhood of the Blackheads, which I mentioned earlier, this was meant to the side altar, and there you can see the kneeling donors and very portrait like paintings of the late medieval Tallinners, but not on the Rode altarpiece.
You've mentioned the Brotherhood of the Blackheads. How come they got such a strange name? Okay, they're young men, so they would have had dark hair, but blackheads?
Yeah, it's coming from Saint Maurice, the black soldier saint. And Mauritius was really very, very highly venerated in Hanseatic cities, especially in the German-speaking cities and in the north. So Mauritius, the black soldier, was the patron of this organization, and he's also depicted on the emblem of the Brotherhood. And Mauritius, the black soldier, the black head, so the name came from this saint. And it also shows again how soldier saints were highly venerated in Tallinn and also in Riga.
Why was that?
The honest answer is that we don't know, actually. Tallinn was a merchant city, and the soldier saints are not very common among the merchants. But maybe it already started in the 13th century during crusades to the north, and maybe the roots of the blackhead are there.
You've talked about the guilds who were the sponsors and the commissioners, and the fact that a lot of local people also put in their contribution to create this wonderful work of art. So they collected all this money, all these coins. How did they then take it to the Rode workshop in Lübeck? They can't have sent it through the banking system, can they? How was the money transferred?
Yes, they started to collect the money already in the first part of the 1470s. And of course, these main sponsors also helped. It was all organized by the church wardens. And we know that Hans Rottert, one of the church wardens, were behind that. And of course, they collected money, but also wax, the bee wax. And it was all sent to Lübeck. And the merchant named Bertolt Rickman was the one who went to Lübeck and back to Tallinn. And they sent money and wax to the Lübeck several times. And it was done with boats.
So they loaded the coins onto a boat, beeswax onto the boats, and sent it off and hoped there weren't any pirates.
Yes, you're right. And we also know how much the Altarpiece cost to the Tallinners. And it was huge sum of money. It was 1,250 Rigan marks. You could buy 2 or 3 stone houses in Tallinn for this money, or a very, very big boat. So even today's terms, it means millions of euros. And I think it's also important to point out that all the congregation was behind that, not only sponsors. Everyone gave something when it came to Tallinn and was put on the high altar. It was huge. It was so important to do all of them. And maybe this is also one of the reasons it has been preserved. It has always been part of the community and part of the cultural memory. And even during the Reformation and the centuries after that, it remained on the high altar.
You have masses of information about the Rode Altarpiece, who paid for it, who commissioned it, how much it cost. So you obviously have got the most amazing archive sources. How did all these archives survive 500 or 600 years in Tallinn, considering the climate, where they might have rotted, and all the wars and conflicts in the meantime?
Yeah, Tallinn City Archives are very, very special. And of course, first of all, because of the medieval sources. And this is one of the most important medieval archives in the Northern Europe. And the core of the archives are the documents of the Tallinn city and town. And the earliest sources are from the beginning of the 13th century. And when we are talking about St. Nicholas Church, almost all medieval count books of the church wardens have been preserved. And of course, additional documents of the city council. Officially, the archive was established in the 19th century, but it has been evacuated during different wars. During the First World War, the city archive was evacuated to Moscow, and it came back to Tallinn in 1920 after the Tartu Peace Treaty, when we became independent. During the Second World War, 1944, the medieval part of the city archive were evacuated to Germany. And it stayed there almost 50 years. So during the Cold War, the medieval part of the Tallinn City Archive was in Germany in Koblenz. For researchers, it meant that for Estonian historians, it was impossible to work with our medieval sources, but the Germans had the possibility. And when you are looking at about the historiography of the medieval history of Tallinn or Estonia, you see that in the 70s and 80s, mostly Germans during the research, but when the city archives comes back to Tallinn in 1990, you can see the boom, yeah, and the boom of medievist and art history writing in Estonia. So the sources are back. There are new generations of young historians and art historians. The Tallinn City Archive and the researchers, the work what they are doing and what they have done during the last 20, 30 years, this is actually amazing. And thanks for them, we can travel back to medieval times.
Yeah, fascinating story of mobile archives. Yes, I remember 89, 90 so well, but I'd never have thought of moving boxes of medieval papers. It would have been the last thing on my mind. It is an amazing story.
It's amazing, and it's also the story about the cultural memory. How easy is it to lose that, and how wonderful is it to have it back?
Well, yes, actually, that was going to be my next question, which sadly must also be my last question. The residents of Tallinn have access to this marvelous piece of work and the archives. What do you think the perceived value, the heritage value is of this treasure now, today?
Today, we are very proud of our medieval history. And the Rode Altarpiece, when we are opening this 3 times per year, the people are gathering, they're coming, this is very crowded. And the stories and the people behind the altarpiece, these are also the part of the object. But when we are looking back in the history, it hasn't always been so, especially in the first part of the 20th century, because it is also a question whose heritage it is. For example, in the 1920s, 1930s, it was seen as a German heritage. Today, this is our heritage, Estonian, European, and part of our cultural history. And what is also interesting, how this kind of heritage was seen during the Soviet period. And medieval history, the medieval art, were very high status on 1960s, 70s, 80s. It was at the heyday of medieval art history in the Estonian art history. And why? I think that it was because of the very, very high-level artworks in our collections. And the difficult times were in the 1990s when it's not popular again. But I think in the last 20 years, the heydays of the medievalism in Estonia has came back.
We were looking at this altarpiece in terms of time travel back to the 1470s, 1480s. And your answer has just taken me on a time travel journey through the 20th and the 21st century. I'm blown away. It's just amazing. It's something I didn't expect at all.
Yeah, but all this 20th century history, it is so interesting.
Yes, and it was actually fascinating your talk about the modern city and how people reacting to it, and coming back to appreciation of the fine artwork, the religious artwork, and the fact that it's Tallinn and Estonian. That's absolutely amazing. And on that cheerful note, I would like to thank you very, very much for coming on to the MECERN podcast and talking to us today about your time travel through the Rode Altarpiece and its significance.
Thank you very much, Karan. It was wonderful. And for me, to talk about the Rode Altarpiece, it is always as a time traveling to the end of the 15th century Tallinn. And through this altarpiece, you can be close to the people who lived in Tallinn 500 years ago. It is a portal to the past. So let's enjoy that.
Yes, let's. And I would recommend anyone listening to go to Tallinn and go to the Niguliste Museum and see the altarpiece for themselves. Merike, thank you so much for coming on to the MECERN podcast. Today I've been talking to Merike Kurisoo, director of the Niguliste Museum in Tallinn, about the Rode Altarpiece and the time travel that it enables us to do. My thanks to everyone for listening. I hope you found it as interesting and enjoyable as I did, and I certainly did. Please do look out for the next MECERN podcast, in which MECERN members and associates talk about their recent or ongoing research into medieval Central Europe. And if you have research that you or your colleagues are doing and you would like to talk about it to MECERN, please do contact me through the MECERN board or MECERN website administrator. I'm Karen Culver for the MECERN podcast. Thank you and goodbye until the next time.